Hey you guys, it's been a while since I've been on camera, so my cat is going to give me a little bit of moral support. So I wanted to introduce this bunny tutorial. This bunny is the culmination of quite a long journey, and it all started really when I saw the beautiful cats of Yutaka Murakami. So here are a couple of my favorite paintings by him. I got so excited about these paintings that I reached out to him and asked him what was his trick. And not really expecting for him to answer me, but he did, and he shared a little tip with me, which is the paper that he uses. So I'm going to show that paper to you as soon as I can, but I can't right now because I have Kitty in my arms and she's looking at me with such love in her eyes that I can't put her down now. With that bit of information, I bought some paper that he suggested, and this is the outcome of that. And I was overall happy with it. I was able to get those really beautiful fur textures, but it wasn't quite to the level I wanted. And I kind of just put it aside for a while. And so then recently I was searching on Etsy just to see what was out there as far as cat paintings go. And I found these beautiful cat paintings by a lady named Bedorka. Here are her pictures. This is a painting here that she painted. So I reached out to her and I asked her, do you ever do videos? And it just so happens that she had just uploaded videos a week or two ago. If you go and look at her channel, she has 9 subscribers, which is crazy. She's gonna have a lot more. So be sure to check her out and give her some YouTube love. Be sure to watch till the end because I'm going to give you probably the most important new tip that I learned that helped me be successful. Subscribe to my channel. I upload new videos every week. Like my video and ask me a question or leave me a comment in the comments below, and I'd love to chat with you there. And if you are interested in watching this tutorial real time and get the downloadable traceable, the reference photo, and the supply list, come and join me and my students for all the fun that we have on my Patreon. And thank you so much to my Patreon students who make this channel possible. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so first thing I want to show you this paper. I'm not gonna hold out any longer. It's this white Watson paper and it comes in different sizes. F4 refers to the size. It's about, I would say 10 by 13 inches roughly. And this is 300 gram weight paper. So I got this on Amazon. I looked today, you can still get it on Amazon, but I think it's hit or miss and it's expensive. So I want to tell you a little trick also before we get started with the footage. Bedorka uses, it's 140 pound Arches cold press paper. So if you do not have white Watson, do not worry. Just use your Arches. 140 pound, 300 pound would probably work too. So that's all you need, and you don't need a lot of colors. Lamp black is what Bedorka uses, and that's what I used on this bunny as well. All right, let's take a look at this footage and I'll explain to you what I'm doing. So the first step that I do when I'm painting is to first erase the marks that have been left by my pencil that are a little bit too dark. And on this white Watson paper, if you choose to use that, you want to use a really soft eraser. So I'm using this soft art eraser. A kneaded eraser works really well. Then I'm going to put some masking on this bunny. I'm going to mask out the whiskers, and so you don't have to do that. There's so many different things that you can use to paint whiskers or to create whiskers. You can use a gel pen, you can use a white pastel pencil, a white charcoal pencil, you can use white ink, and what else? Gouache. There's so many different ways to create the whiskers, but I chose to use masking so that I had nice white, crisp white whiskers. So that's how I did mine, and you can watch some of my other videos about how I started painting to learn how I use masking, how I use soap to protect the bristles. I use a rigger, an old rigger, and create the whiskers that way. And also I make sure that I put the glint in the eye. All right, the next step after you get your masking on and after it is dried is to wet the bunny. So you're going to wet the whole bunny. And we're going to try to do this in one go. I actually did not succeed. I actually ended up having to re-wet the big ear that's up, that's the biggest the highest ear. And so I had to re-wet that area because my paper dried out too fast. But here you see me using my 3/4 silver black velvet brush, which the silver black velvets are hands down right now my favorite brush to use. And I'm just getting everything wet with clear water. I start out by it being pretty drippy, but then as I work this first layer of water, I go back in with a wrung out brush and kind of sop up the extra water so it's all evenly distributed across the bunny. And especially for the tail, I painted water over the tail, but also into the background so that the bunny tail would fluff out. I really wanted to get that effect, and I think that's one of the most successful parts of this painting for me is the nice fluffy bunny tail. I really love bunny tails. They are so cute. And so I wanted to make sure that I got that. Then you can see how I did a test, and when the paint doesn't bloom too much, but just a little, just the right amount, that's when you know that your paper is ready to receive the paint. So you want to wait for your paper to dry a little bit. If you paint on too wet paper, your paint will just bloom out too much. So you want to let your paper dry just a little bit so the paint blooms a little bit, but still holds its shape of whatever mark you put down. That is why I put that little dot. It was like a test dot. And here I am painting that tail. I was so happy with it. And then I'm just very quickly working while the paint is wet to get the rest of the black markings. I will say that another important thing for this technique to work is to use cream consistency paint. If you have not seen my video on tea, milk, and cream consistency paint, then be sure to check that out. I'll link it up here, or maybe up here, and you can watch that video. And you can also watch my video about the push technique, because I'm going to use the push technique a lot in this painting, where I drip a little bit of clear water when the paper is a little bit more dry. I drip clear water into the white areas so the water will push out into the black fur. That is a key part of getting these textures, is using the push technique. So be sure to check out that video. So I'm using cream consistency paint, which is thicker paint, less water, on medium wet paper. Painting in these eyes, trying to be careful, failing. I did not like the shape of my eyes. Later in this video, you'll see how I go in and fix mistakes. And that is the really cool thing about this white Watson paper. It erases so easily. In fact, you have to be really delicate with it. If you use a scrubber like I usually use, which by the way, I'll link to that really good video about how to use a scrubber, which I use on almost every painting. But you can't use a stiff scrubber on this paper. But Arches cold press 140 pound, which is what I almost always use, and Bedorka almost always uses that paper too. That stands up really well to scrubbing, but I had to be more delicate, so I'll show you in a little bit how I did the fixing of just little fixes. All right, here I'm starting to put little drips of paint. Basically, you just want to babysit this painting and watch it as it dries to see if you want to fix anything, if you want to put more what Bedorka calls washbacks, I think. I call it the push technique, where you drip a little bit of water to create even more dramatic cauliflower effect. I'm putting in that little pink nose. I used my M-gram Naphthol red for the nose. I couldn't resist putting the pink nose in. All right, my paper is still wet, but the ear's not wet. You'll see me touch my paper, and what I'm doing is making sure the paper is still wet enough to have the effects that I want, and it's not. So I went back into that big ear, the tall ear, and put more water, and it was pretty drippy. And you can see me here, I'm pounding it on my paper to kind of get the water to drip down naturally instead of using my brush, because I wanted it to look as drippy and natural as possible. I wanted the watercolor to do the work. So that's what you see me doing there. Filling in that ear. And you can see the paint dropping, it's dripping down into the body of the bunny, but the rest of the bunny is much drier than that ear now, so it doesn't spread out too much. One other thing that I will say, look how my paint is reacting when it reaches the masking. It hits the masking and then it follows the line of the masking instead of going straight across the masking. So it makes some unnatural spots underneath the whiskers. So I had to make sure that I went back and painted across the whiskers to help the paint jump over that boundary so it wouldn't look weird, like straight edged spots. Instead, the spots go under the whiskers instead of running down along parallel to them. That just doesn't look right. Using my silver black velvet size 8 round, I would say that I can do 80% of the painting I do with my silver black velvet size 8 round. I don't need much else. All right, do you see how as this painting dries, I continue to do the push technique? I continue to drop that clear water onto the white parts of the bunny. Okay, here's where I wanted you guys to see what I was doing. I'm fixing the shape of the bunny's ear, and then you can use your soft brush to lift back up paint you don't want there, especially if it's wet. And later I'll go in with an acrylic painting brush, which is harder than a watercolor painting brush, but it's softer than a stiff scrubber. It's perfect for removing paint on this white Watson delicate paper. So I will use that in a little bit to reshape the eyes. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do in the background, but as the painting developed, I saw that certain things did need to be popped out, and I felt like the bunny needed to be a little bit more grounded, so I decided to go ahead and put those shadows in. And in a few minutes, you'll see me use some ultramarine blue tea consistency in the background to put all in the background to just pop the bunny out a little bit so that the widest parts of the painting are inside the bunny's fur. So that kind of makes the bunny look like it's coming forward in space and kind of just makes it pop out a little bit better. Ooh, look at those textures. Love them. All right, now I'm going to moisten all the background. I'm putting my clear water all throughout the background, making sure it's pretty much evenly spread across the background. So there's no puddles, there's no dry spots. It's all evenly the same level of moisture. And then I'm gonna mix some really watery tea consistency ultramarine blue to just very subtly darken the background just a tad so that it's no longer the whitest part of the painting. And that's just a basic composition rule in art, not even watercolor, but any art. You want your whitest whites and your darkest darks in the area of interest. So I wanted my whitest whites and my darkest darks inside the bunny, where I want the viewer's eye to look. And blue kind of tells the viewer's eye to keep moving. And blue also creates depth. So when you add blue to a watercolor painting, it will push whatever that thing is back. So it's really hard to have a yellow background. It can be done, but it's hard because that background will come forward because it's warm or yellow. Cool is like ice, blue. Warm colors are like fire and the sun, red and yellow. That's how you remember the difference between warm and cool colors. All right, just cleaning up that background, getting rid of puddles, and then I'm going to re-moisten the paint along the bunny's back. Now you can't do this with arches because arches, this is actually a good thing about arches, I never can keep it straight, but anyway, arches is great for working in delicate glazes because it holds onto the paint. But when you re-wet the paint on this paper, this white Watson, it reactivates and it blooms back out. Did you see how it did that? So I will have to babysit that edge and keep sopping up that black that is blooming into my background now. I want it to be soft, so that's why I did it, but I don't want it to bloom too much. So I'm gonna go back again and again with a wrung out, clean brush that acts like a sponge and just sop it up. See, you'll see me keep going back, sopping it up, and then reactivating a little bit of the paint still so there's not that weird line you can see. But I'm just gonna keep working on this edge and keep softening, mopping up until it's the degree of softness that I want. Now with arches, all you have to do is scrub that edge a little bit and it'll soften right up and it won't bleed like that. It won't release the paint like this paper will. And you have to wait until your painting's completely dry and almost done before you take the masking off. So I just took off the masking, and now I'm just thinning down the whiskers. Just a little bit. I just thought they were too thick. I wanted them to look really refined and thin. So I'm thinning them down. And you just want to make sure you blend these marks that you're making so it doesn't look too stilted that you fixed the whiskers. All right, and then I'm darkening those two legs that are farthest away from us. This is the point in the painting where you want to look at all your values and see, do they hang together? Are the darkest darks really your darkest? Are your lightest lights really your lightest? Are your medium tones the right amount of medium? So that's why I darkened those two legs furthest away from me, because those values weren't balanced out right. And look, it really does make them look now like they're pushed away a little bit more. And I also did a little bit of scrubbing on the eyeliner, the white eyeliner in this case, to just refine the shape of that eyeliner. It was a little bit off, and also softening that just made that eye somehow look a lot more realistic and really beautiful. Think about Hollywood starlets in, what was it, the 40s, 50s? They would always blur out their images a little bit because it's just aesthetically pleasing. That's why soft edges are so important. And for whatever reason, they make a lot of soft edges in a painting usually makes a very aesthetically pleasing painting. So be sure to check out my soft edges video. And I'm just lifting a little bit along that hard edge between the two ears. Just a little. It doesn't take much. I wanted to add a little bit of red to that ear to pop it out just a little bit, not much. And then I'm going to sign this with my Funisuke calligraphy pen. That's what I've been using to sign lately. By the way, if you're interested in accessing my supplies list with all the links to where you can buy them, that's also available to my Patreon members. And I'm removing that micropore. That's another thing I forgot to tell you guys about, the micropore tape. I use micropore surgical tape because all the other tapes that I use do not stick very well. So that's something I've been using, the micropore surgical tape with masking tape on top of that. And that has been working the best for me. I recently learned of another possibility that I want to try out, Scotch tape. Who knew? Scotch tape, but I want to try that. And I don't want to forget to give you my bonus tip about one of the most important things to successfully painting this bunny. And that is a tip that I got from Bedorka. Thank you so much again and again, Bedorka, for so many of your good tips. But that is to paint large. And so this is the largest piece of white Watson paper I can get my hands on, the F4 size. It's about 11 by 14. This would have had even more furry edges in it, I think, if I would have used even bigger paper. And Bedorka even says you can use the back of a bad painting. The back of Arche's cold press 140 pound, just paint on that. Just use scraps of large paintings maybe that you have laying around, possibly. Thank you everybody so much for joining on this tutorial. I hope you learned a lot. I would love to see you over on Patreon, and thank you to my Patreon members who make this channel possible. And I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye. Oh wow, my camera's moving a lot. See you down there. Okay. So be sure. Kitty, do you want in the video? Do you want to do this video with me? Maybe you'll make me more relaxed. You want to try it? And let's just make sure you're not on my... Am I doing this wrong?